Well, I just happened to see a MiG-28 Sorry, Goose. We happened to see a MiG-28 do a 4G negative dive.
Where did you see this?
That's classified.
It's what?
It's classified. I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you.
Welcome back to another episode of the Growing Up Punk podcast. We are so grateful that you decided to join us today. Thank you for being a part of this community and for listening and for commenting and letting us know what it is you like about the show or don't like about the show. We always welcome any kind of feedback, so please feel free to hit us up on our social media. It is Growing Punk Pod on Instagram and Twitter. From there, you can find links to our personal social medias. On there, you will also find a link to our website, growingpunkpod.com. On our website, you will find links to our Patreon. If you like what we are doing on the show and you want more, then you can be a Patreon member, which gets you exclusive content, blogs, reviews, opportunities to connect with us, all that kind of good stuff. So you can check that out there. You can also find links to a merch store where we have some sweet shirt designs that were recently put up there. So you can go and check that out as well. We appreciate any and all of your support on all of this. And so we're excited that you've joined us today. Today we have an interview with Joe, the drummer from Slick Shoes. Joe has been the drummer for the band pretty much the whole time since their first EP in the early 90s, all up into the new album that is released today, September 25th, on Tooth and Nail Records. And so we're so excited to share this interview with you. I had the opportunity to talk to Joe a few weeks ago, and we talk all about drumming and Slick Shoes, which was really fun because I'm a drummer as well, and he has been one of my favorite punk drummers ever since I heard them. And so it was fun to get to talk with him about how he got into drumming, what kind of influences he had, what influenced the different drumming styles on the Slick Shoes albums, what it was like recording back in the 90s and 2000s compared to 2020 and some of those changes. This is a really fun talk. So if you enjoy Slick Shoes, which I'm guessing you do if you're listening to this, and you are a drummer, then double bonus for you today. So thanks so much for checking this out. Even if you're not a drummer, there's lots of really cool stuff in here about Slick Shoes and the new record. So that's enough for me. Thanks so much for listening, and here is my interview with Joe from Slick Shoes. This has been something I've been hoping to do for a long time, so it's cool to, we had Jackson and Jeremiah on a few weeks ago, and now we got you, and so it's cool to kind of hear a bit from, as many people from the band as we can, especially leading up to your new album, which is coming out on September 25th. So really excited to kind of pump that up and get other people excited for that. So, let's just get kind of right into, how did you get into drumming and what made you want to be a drummer? Do you have, specific memories of that, or was it just kind of a gradual thing? What can you share about that?
Basically, I could share since I can have a memory, honestly. I was banging on things, pots and pans, the couch, whatever I could hit with a stick, basically. And that's what I was told by my mother. As soon as I could actually do anything, I was smacking stuff and asking if I could have a drum or something. Fast forward, honestly, I always just air drummed until I was about 15, and then I got grounded for 3 months because I did very poorly in school. Wow. And kids don't do that. But it was kind of a blessing in disguise, I hate to say. My parents were super nice. For some reason, I was grounded for 3 months, and they bought me a drum set. and they put me in drum lessons. So that 3 months, I will tell you something, really shaped up my love for drums, because it's all I did. It's all I did for 3 full months, and then after that, I never wanted to do anything else. You know, my friends would say, "You want to go skate?" or something like that, and I'm just like, nah. I just put on my headphones and play to just about any band I could, you know, that I like to listen to.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a pretty common thing for, guys in our age bracket versus, I listen to podcasts with newer drummers who are, maybe in their 20s, and it's so kind of the opposite right now. New drummers are influenced by, watching videos on YouTube or maybe seeing a band live, where I feel like a lot of guys, more in their 30s, 40s and older, there just wasn't that. And it's so interesting how it just kind of comes naturally. And, it was kind of the same for me. You just kind of start with chopsticks on, an ottoman or the couch or something. And you don't even really know what drumming is. It's just you have that energy and something in your arms that makes you want to move. And I mean, like, it's weird to think that you could start drumming before you'd even really heard drums or heard or seen somebody drumming. And, I always just love hearing kind of how people came into it, and how that passion just kind of grows out of almost nothing except just kind of what's inside of you.
It is exactly something that's just kind of inside of you, just kind of ticking away. And then, I don't know, just like you said, it's so funny. I had myself a little couch drum set too, and I'd set up my little hi-hat and just, made out of pieces of cardboard and whatnot, and just, plug away as much as I could. That's funny.
Yeah. And so did that kind of continue, just kind of all through like middle school and high school, or did, because I've also heard where some musicians, they kind of get into it a bit younger, and then as they kind of go through some of those formative years, they either, get more into sports or cars or whatever, and then, later on kind of come back to it. Did that happen with you, or you just the whole time it was just drums?
No, I would have to say from that 3 months where I started playing, I didn't stop. Like, I quit skateboarding. I didn't really skateboard that much anymore. Like I said, my friends would come over every day. They'd just be like, let's go skate. I'm like, nah, I want to play. That evolved eventually into some of those friends picking up some instruments. And, one in particular picked up a guitar, and actually I had 2 friends who picked up a guitar. So that led to like my first, jamming with someone. And then I don't know about you, but like once that happened, I just kind of knew what I wanted to do forever,
Yeah. Yeah. And I also find it a funny correlation with drummers and skateboarding, because I was, same thing with skateboarding. However, I was always too scared to actually like commit to tricks, because I didn't want to, sprain my ankle or twist my leg or something, because then I wouldn't be able to play drums and jam with my friends. And so I was always kind of like that, like weak skateboarder that liked doing it kind of as a mode of transportation. But when it came to actually like doing tricks or stuff, I was just like, I'm too scared to try it because I don't want to ruin my feet for drumming.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how that happens, right? That was my exact mindset. Like, I really did like skating, and I would do tricks and stuff like that too. And it was like the thing I did every day before drums. I'd be out all day skating, right? And then that, I don't know, skating and music kind of goes hand in hand, because I had a ramp in my backyard. And we would always have, I just have a boombox out there, and anybody who was over there skating with us could just put on, whatever tape they wanted. So it's like I heard so many different kinds of music and stuff from that it's just like, it was just like a gradual, just like super, I don't know, I'd have to say a pretty organic move from skateboarding to music,
Can you recall with drums, when did you start? So when you were playing, when did you start maybe noticing, maybe either on music videos or seeing a live band or just listening to an album where it was like, oh, there's other people that are drumming, like, oh, okay, he's trying something or he's playing something that I can try. Like, when did that kind of shift from just playing what was in your head or coming to you versus kind of emulating somebody else? Like, what would some of those earlier influences have been?
I can tell you exactly. The first album I tried to learn was Metallica's "Injustice for All." I was a huge fan of Lars Ulrich when I first started drumming, and if I could play any song on that record, I was stoked. So I basically learned almost the whole record in a summer. And my goal, it's so funny to talk about now. My goal was to play the song One, that real fast double bass part or whatnot. And then when I picked that up, I was like, all right, yeah, this is great. I quickly kind of moved away from Lars, even though I love Metallica and everything like that, because I started to find like better drummers. And specifically Dave Lombardo from Slayer. For some reason, his double bass footwork and his fills, the quick fills he would do and everything was a huge influence on my drumming, pretty much.
Were you? Yes,
go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah.
No,
I was just gonna say, with the double kick, did that come naturally to you? Like, were you able just to kind of pick up on that, or what was that like, kind of adjusting to that?
Well, it's kind of funny because it's like we said earlier about playing the couch and everything. I would just sit in chairs and do the little double bass thing for hours, just tapping my feet or doing whatever. So when I actually got a double bass pedal, I was like, wow, this seems pretty natural, right? It came pretty easy. But like I said, I started playing a lot of metal stuff, a lot more, because the metal drummers to me at first seem a lot techier than some of the punk drummers I listened to, right?
Yeah.
And they were doing a lot more with their hands and feet and double bass and all that stuff. So that's how I started, kind of playing along to super metal-y bands like Testament and Anthrax and Slayer and Metallica. That gradually turned into like some of my biggest influences in punk rock. Like if we fast forward a few years, I got really heavily into NoFX, and I like Smelly, their drummer, a lot. Lagwagon Dave Ron's probably one of my favorite drummers. I'll just say that right now. Like he and even Derek, their old drummer from Lagwagon, was super good. So like Lagwagon's drummers, their lineups were like a big, huge influence on me. I would have to say like an obscure influence, but like I guess it would make sense because I play pretty fast, is Dennis Chambers. He's a drummer. He's a jazz drummer that played like in the John Scofield band or something like that. He also played with Parliament and Funkadelic. Just funk bands, but the guy's hands are faster than anything I've seen. So I used to watch a lot of his instructional videos and try and pick up some of the fast fills from that.
Yeah. Do you find that you can, like for myself, I'm more of a hands-on learner. Like I can watch all sorts of videos on YouTube and instructional things, but it just doesn't translate for me. And so, I mean, lots of times I just don't end up learning new things because I can't just like sit there and watch and then try. Like I almost need someone right in front of me to kind of show me. So are you able to pick up that stuff fairly easily?
So for me, it's more of an audible thing. Like I like to, I didn't know how to read music right away at all, really. Like I learned to play the drums by putting on headphones and just playing beats. I never thought I needed it or anything like that until, post Slick Shoes during one of the like hiatuses or whatever. I taught drums, and then that taught me real quickly that I needed to learn how to read. I learned how to read music, but even still, like knowing how to read and notate music, I would rather put on my headphones and listen to said drummer do whatever he's doing and then just try and emulate it, Yeah. It's a lot easier for me that way.
Are you still able to read music?
I probably could, but I haven't done it in so long that it'd probably be shady.
Yeah, and I feel like that's with a lot of drummers that get into punk and metal. Like, we just want to play fast and hard. I never had the patience or the focus. So I did drum lessons just for 1 year when I was 12, and so I learned how to read then. But as soon as I knew how to play beats, I was like, hey, that's all I want to do. Like, listen to something, play along. I couldn't really be bothered to like read music and just kind of play, so kind of on par sort of thing.
Yeah, it was the same with me. I took lessons for a spell when my parents put me in lessons, but it went from like the drum teacher teaching me for a few lessons to him and I just rapping about drummers we liked all the time. And
Yeah.
we were paying him for it. So I'm like, I don't know. I'd probably just go back to playing on the headphones.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so for most artists, originality is first preceded by a phase of learning and often emulating, as you've been sharing. So how would you describe your own development as an artist and figuring out your own drumming style?
I think that actually just, I don't know, I think it came from doing exactly what it said, playing to all my favorite drummers. And then I started to kind of find my niche, I guess you could say. I started out as a double bass, like I played a lot of double bass, and like I said, I played a lot of metal drumming, at first. But I think I started to find my own style when I gave that up, and I switched to single bass drum, and I started playing with some different types of music, and I started to actually try to develop a really quick right foot, and I think that was like my driving force to kind of like be my signature, was try and just kind of play as fast as I could with one foot, right? And then after that, I just tried to play as it's so funny, at first, especially around the EP Rusty, era and stuff like that, I was literally just, trying to play as fast as I could. And then, and Jackson and I would just kind of, we would definitely push each other because, Jackson's a monster guitar player, and he would just write these riffs where, like, I would have to step up to the plate, right? And even before Slick Shoes, I got involved with some musicians that were just so much better than me. So I think like I found my style kind of through playing with so many different people and so many different, like, I don't know, scenarios and different types of music that like it just kind of developed. And I'd just say that, a good portion of my drumming comes from me just literally stealing stuff from my favorite people because I love the way they drum, right? And so I feel like, I don't literally steal their rolls, but like, I just feel like sometimes I'll do a roll and I'll be like, oh, that's Dave Ron. I need to change that, right? Or something like that. So all my influences really shine through almost too obviously sometimes.
Yeah. So is there no double kick on any Slick Shoes album?
No, sir.
Like double pedals? Wow. Man, good for you. I've never been able to have a really fast right foot. Maybe I've just never had the right pedal, but I mean, I watch, YouTube guys doing that, and it's kind of, I mean, it's all kind of once you learn the technique, I guess with anything, then you can kind of, modify it or play around with it, or, kind of like ghost notey kind of stuff to kind of make it sound like that. But man, that's awesome. That makes you want to go back and just listen to that. But as a drummer, what are your must-haves for feeling comfortable, both on, whether it was on tour back in the day or for current shows, and as you practice at home, like what are the things that you need to have when you sit down at a drum kit? So both, in a live setting and then for practicing at home.
Well, I personally, I'd say the only thing I really need is the sticks I use that I'm pretty partial to. Sorry. Other than that, like, obviously I prefer my kit, but there's not a whole lot that I have to have. I'd say my drumsticks and my DW 9000 pedal are kind of must-haves. Obviously, I want my drums and everything there, but, I do a lot of backline. I play a lot of backline gear, especially nowadays since we do a lot of flyouts.
Right.
So it's, I had to learn to just get comfortable playing random kits. So really, as long as I have, like, a decent throne, because like a hard throne's a drag. And, my DW 9000, and, I play Vader 580, Los Angeles 580s, and I don't know, I just love them. And if I play other sticks, I tend to just, I don't know, I feel like my hits aren't hard enough or just whatever.
Yeah. What about for cymbals? I find that cymbals, I mean, because, you're always on a cymbal. A drum, you can kind of, change with the miking. You can make, toms that aren't like super in tune or whatever still sound decent through PA, but I find if the cymbals are, poor quality or wrong sizes, or it can really affect it. Have you ever had to, just where you show up and the cymbals are totally wonky or anything, or does that not bother you?
I've bought some pretty wonky cymbals. Funny story, right before we did the live record, I was buying some new gear and I decided to try these heavier cymbals, and I brought them to the show, and our sound guy was just like, "Whoa, what the heck is going on with those?" And I'm like, "They sound great, right?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't know how we're going to record those." So I've made some poor mistakes, but in terms of like the cymbals I've bought, I am really partial to, especially right now, the Zildjian K hybrids.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of playing those all around except for my ride, which I'll get to my ride in a minute because there's a cool story behind that. But I do like the K hybrid hi-hats and the crashes. I think they sound pretty insane. As far as the ride, I've been using this same Z Custom ride since I was 15. It's on every record I've done. And I've honestly played it everywhere. So, like, I guess you could say if there's another thing I have to have, kind of, and especially in a recording situation, I like to bring that cymbal because it's just kind of part of me now.
Yeah. Oh man, those cymbals and the rides especially are just like built to last. Like they're so thick. They, especially for punk when you're doing a fast beat on the ride. It just helps to have, a thicker ride so that you hear every hit, whereas, maybe more, I think like bands like Newfound Glory and Blink where they're doing like a lot of crashing on the ride. Then, you don't want a nice thick ride like that, but
I love the pingy rides, especially if you're going to be riding it like you mentioned earlier, doing something faster. You really want those notes to cut and whatnot. And believe me, there's a time and a place for a nice washy ride like Cyrus uses or Travis from Blink. But I definitely lean more towards like the cleaner pingy rides.
Yeah, and I find like I also have it's a 21-inch Zildjian A custom ride, so it's really nice for crashing on, but as soon as I put that one on my kit, I miss my thicker one that I've had for 13 years, because it's like, man, I need that. I need the bell on it. It just kind of adds so much more accent, so it really does. Almost need a few different kits just to have different setups, but yeah, it's definitely fun to play around on that. But yeah, I know when you show up and there's just like wonky cymbals, it just makes it really hard to play.
Yeah, they can be pretty bad. Yeah, they can be pretty bad at times.
What does your creative process look like? So when you sit down to write drum parts for an album, whether that's thinking back to past albums or the new album, what does that look like? Are you the type of drummer that mostly tries to kind of fit the parts and overall song, or do you like to have parts that kind of stand out on their own, or a mix of those? What does that look like for you as a drummer?
So like I mentioned at first, it was all about being fast. And then I started to kind of grow a little bit, I think, as a musician. And I started to, when I write a song, I usually am there, obviously you know this, but you're usually there just to hold it down for the writing process at first, right? You're just kind of cruising through, getting through like the song, and then you have your base of the song. After we've done that, I like to go back, if we've done pre-production, which we usually try and do, and I will really nitpick them. I'll go to the parts, I'll listen to them, and I'll see like, what can I do here? Am I doing the same thing 2 times? What can be done better here? And then I do that to the best of my ability, bring it back to the boys and see if they like it, right? If everything goes smooth, then, it has to get past Steve Kravac. And if Steve's into it, which honestly, working with Steve and doing drums, he's kind of a mastermind where he just will get the best performance out of you. So if my drum take makes the cut past Steve and whatnot, or whomever I might be working with, then I've done a good job, and that tends to be what I do per song. I like to take it back and put it under a magnifying glass several times.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting about Steve, because I didn't have a note about that here, but that just reminds me of, I think of a few records, the 2 that MXPX did and the first Dingy's record. Both of those drummers have said that, Steve really wanted them to, kind of tone back the drums, not have anything fancy. I think on that Dingy's record, I don't know if there's any drum fills on that whole album.
Yeah, it's pretty
talking
steady.
With Ethan on that, and however, Ethan has said that because of that experience working with Steve, he kind of credits that experience to why he's still successful as a musician. And so, how is that like for you as a bit more of a technical drummer or technical band? With for the style of music that Slick Shoes plays, you need to have, a bit more dynamic than just playing the straight beat. So How do you kind of find that medium with Steve? Or what was that like going in with him? Were you a little apprehensive of maybe there's too many fills or too much technicality, or do you just kind of work that all out when you're there together?
So we did Burnout with Steve, and that was an eye-opener. I'd never worked with a producer who worked me that hard. And we were recording to 2-inch tape, so there's not a whole lot of not a whole lot of cutting and editing, right? So he's having me go through 6 or so takes of takes that I think are all right, I'm pretty stoked on them, but he's like, do another one. I think you could probably do it better, right? And I don't know, on Burnout at least too, I was going home and I was having to soak my ankles because I was playing drums so much. It took 7 days, maybe more, to do drums. The one thing I will tell you about Steve is that he will not let a single thing slide. If my drum take is done, and I'm pretty confident that it sounds real good with Steve, This time around, I was a little more, I don't know, we're all older, and it was super good to see Steve, and we were just really open about what we wanted with this record. So I was like, I'm going to get a little bit crazier, but I still wanted him to keep me in line because I didn't want to overplay. I wanted to be tasteful, and I wanted to, not do fills throughout the whole record, but just where they needed to be, right? And and he's real good at that. He's real good at, changing a drum beat if you need to, just to even accent a cymbal that is a sweeter note than the other one,
Right.
So that was a cool experience.
Do you enjoy drumming in the studio, or does the repetitiveness kind of kill, the joy of it for you? Or do you ever feel completely ready to go into a studio, or is it, where you have parts that kind of need to be tweaked in there? So I guess kind of a 2-part, do you enjoy that studio part of it, and do you ever really feel completely ready to go in?
I do not ever feel completely ready to go in. I always feel like I'm underprepared. But I think that... I lost my train of thought. I think that usually when I go in, I'm super stoked, right? And then after you've been playing the same song probably 10 or 11 times, some of that stoked goes away. And I don't know, it might be just me, but if I'm playing the same song a little bit too long, my demeanor seems to change a little bit. But overall, I think, I don't know, especially recording this record, I think it was just so much fun. And it was so good to be around everyone this time, and it was just so good to do everything that I don't know. I was stoked every day, and it didn't really matter how many times I played. Plus, it's been so long since I did anything like that. Like,
sure.
man, it was just like the first time again, almost. You know?
Yeah. Does Slick Shoes play live with a click for drums?
No, not really. We did this time. We don't record, like, we don't write our songs that way, I guess is what we say.
Okay.
In the studio, we definitely do. There's a click involved no matter what. But when we write live, you know, we'll maybe do it to get tempos, but we don't really practice or anything to clicks.
So how do you find when you get into the studio and all of a sudden you have that click in your ear? Is that throwing you off, or can you adapt to that fairly easily?
Oh, the ice pick. I can adapt fairly quickly because when I practice on my own, I practice to a click. Oh, okay. And when I'm getting tempos for albums and stuff like that, I play the track to a click and stuff like that. So I try and prepare myself that way.
Yeah. When you did the drums on this album, did you do them all kind of in one, not one sitting, but, you know, like 3 or 4 days together? Or was it, you know, one weekend here and then one weekend? Like, did you kind of have a break in there?
Most definitely. Because of our work schedules and everything like that,
right.
We were recording on the weekends for sure.
Yeah, so that would have been, I'm assuming, a big change, right? Was that the first time you had done drums like that? Like the rest of your albums, you just would have gone and, you know, done it in 3-4 days, all the drums, and then been done?
Yeah, it was kind of weird because after the first weekend, you know, you kind of feel like you're done because you're not recording for a week.
Right.
And then when I had to go back the next week, and I'm like, oh man, I'm not done. And I think it took me about 3 weekends to get, you know, finished with this record. But yeah, it was different.
Yeah. Well, that's nice. So you guys did the drums first?
Yeah.
As most bands do, yeah. So at least you kind of had the satisfaction of being like, all right, where drums are all good, now I can just enjoy, you know, the rest of the process and seeing what the rest of the guys kind of match to the drums.
Absolutely. That's the best part of it. After you're done.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the nice part about being the drummer is typically you go first and then you can just kind of chill instead of, you know, sitting around for however long waiting to do vocals or, you know, guitar or whatever else. So that is a nice part of that. Out of all the past Slick Shoes album, which one did you enjoy drumming on the most? And what are some experiences you remember about drumming on that record? If there is, you know, one that stands out in your mind.
Well, there's a couple. On Far From Nowhere, we worked with Ed Stasium, and we were recording up in this studio up in the hills in Calabasas in California, and it was super nice studio, super nice area, and it was a really comfortable recording situation, one where it was the first time that the producer had a click at the beginning of the song, but he would bring the click out and just let me vibe the rest of the song.
Oh, nice.
And so my playing on that record is a lot more natural to kind of how I play live versus, you know, when you're playing to the ice pick, the click just in your ear the whole time, right? So that was a different experience for me, but I think it kind of worked out for the better because those are some of my favorite drum tracks are on that record.
Yeah.
Until we did this new one. Like, this new record is definitely my favorite playing. It's my favorite bandmates playing. Like, I think they did an amazing job. Like, I'm just dumbfounded at how everybody just stepped up to the plate. Super proud and stoked on them. Like right now, it's definitely all about the new record.
Yeah. What was the feeling you guys had about writing and recording a new album? You know, I'm sure you never thought it was going to happen, or maybe it was just kind of like a dream or a goal, but maybe didn't seem realistic. So what was that feeling when it was like, okay, we're actually doing this, we're booking studio time, we're, you know, going back on tooth and nail? Kind of what was the feeling amongst the group?
Amongst the group, we were all pretty happy. We were all pretty stoked. It seemed surreal. It just seemed like it wasn't really happening until it did. I don't know. Like, the whole process, everything seems like it happened so fast that it seems like almost a blur now. But I can tell you we were nothing but excited.
Mm. And how did, like, your wives and families feel about all this? Was that, because I imagine that was, you know, took a lot of time away from them, and Was there any tension with that, or was everyone just kind of happy to see you guys back at it?
Well, I think I can only speak on my behalf. I'm pretty sure everybody was fine with it. It's just something I'm doing now, and it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe Sunday night hockey or something like that. If you're just playing the beer league or something,
Right.
But we play music. I know with our schedules and how much we work and stuff like that, even doing this is an amount of pressure on the family that, we all try and take into consideration because, it's a different time. We're not kids anymore,
Yeah. How do your kids feel about it? Because you have some teenage kids, don't you?
I have adults.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any more
crazy.
teenagers. So my son's super excited because he also plays drums, and
right on.
honestly, I'd have to say he's probably better than I am.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm super proud of the kid, and he plays in a couple like bands around our town, Pour Over, and a band called Callers. They're on Spotify. You check them out.
Oh, cool.
He's super, super good drummer. He's stoked, obviously. And then my son and daughter, they're also stoked too. They don't remember a whole lot from when they were kids and I was doing this,
Yeah.
They just remember, Dad was gone for a few months and then he wasn't, but now it kind of makes sense what I was doing to them, and they're super stoked on it, and they actually like it, which is pretty rad.
Yeah, that's awesome. So there's obviously lots of excitement and new energy coming back. Was there ever any worry, about being able to keep up stamina-wise, or have you, just kind of kept up with drumming over the years and that wasn't a problem? Because I know for myself, I'm not playing for hours at a time anymore, just kind of, 5-10 minutes here and there when I can. And I definitely could not play for, hours and hours, especially in a studio when you really have to be given it.
Yeah, I do run into some problems if I don't at least hit the treadmill in terms of stamina if I'm not playing the drums. I do go spells without it because work's just hectic sometimes, right? And I just don't get around to it. So it's unfortunate, but it does happen, and it could be a pretty good spell, sometimes 2 or 3 months. So
wow.
Stamina is definitely an issue sometimes, but I just try and get back on the horse as soon as possible. I have some back issues too. I have sciatica, so there are some times where I just can't play because it's so bad.
Yeah. So what did any of that ever interfere with the studio stuff? Like, was there any time where I was like, hey, I can't play anymore today? And
no, thank God.
Call it a day?
Oh,
no, that's awesome.
None of that happened. And honestly, I'm pretty bad at physical therapy or taking care of myself, to be 100% honest. So as long as I'm, doing that, it doesn't seem to be a huge problem.
Yeah. What was your drum setup for this new record? You mentioned you'd been using some different snare drums, and so do you take your own drums to the studio, or does Steve have drums there? Kind of what was that process like?
So this time around, I got to use my own kit. So I used my SJC for the kick and the toms. And then I work with a company called Custom Drum Concepts that they do my snare drums. And so I got to use my snare drum. Actually, I used my aluminum CDC snare drum on most of the record. That's what you're going to hear. Awesome. And then we had 4 different snares. So there's a couple songs where you're going to hear like... let's see, what was it? It was this 13-inch CDC. So yeah, there was 2 CDC drums and then like an OC percussion.
Oh, right on.
We ended up using for one of the songs. They're real snappy. Old vented snare. You remember they made those cool vented snares?
Yeah. Yeah, how much...
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, you can keep going.
And then like in terms of cymbals, of course I had my Z Custom ride. That was non-negotiable. I actually did pull it off for one song, which hurt my soul. But and then we actually used a few different cymbals. I can't really actually remember them all, but we did not use my K hybrids. They did not make the cut. So I think it was just A Customs in terms of crashes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I got to use my stuff, so for the most part, in terms of drums.
Yeah. How much, does the drum setup or using various drums aid in the process? Like, do you find switching out a snare kind of reinvigorates, your energy or your creativeness, or is it just more so for the sound on the record versus, how you might actually play that part?
Well, I would say certain tension on the snare and everything, like if it's just tuned just right and everything just feels good, right? So,
yeah.
If that's in place and I switch out the snare and I just feel like it's cracking real good, I'm getting good buzz rolls, I'm getting, everything I need out of it, yeah, of course it's going to help, definitely going to help my performance. Sometimes it, might hinder it as well because I'm just not feeling it. I'm not getting the rebound I want or something like that. But this time around, I was kind of vocal about it, like if I wasn't feeling it, but I didn't run into that too much. Yeah.
Are you really good at tuning drums, or is that something that Steve kind of takes over?
That it's weird, but I do okay tuning drums, I guess. And I made the cut this time, so I tuned my own drums this time.
Oh, awesome.
On Burnout, I think they brought in, I forget who they brought in. It was some really good drum tech. I think it was Green Day's drum tech or something like that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
But so they just kind of take over that, and in between takes they'll come tune it up, and then you come back and do another take.
Yeah, it was a little weird, to be honest. It was all new to me, but yeah, that's what they did for sure. This time it was like just me kind of making sure everything's still in tune in between takes and everything.
Yeah. Do you find it difficult to adapt to different producers, or is studio drumming pretty much the same for you, kind of regardless of who's behind the board? You mentioned working with Joe and Steve. Have there been any other producers in there that maybe were more challenging to work with drum wise, or has all your experience in recording been fairly even?
Honestly, most of my experiences, they are what you make them. I've had producers that were not as easy to work with, but you kind of have to make the situation good. Otherwise, your songs are going to sound like garbage. So,
right. Yeah,
so really, you just have to kind of go in with a positive mindset. I've been fortunate enough that, the only producer that I would say was, I'm not going to name him, obviously, but that was a little bit tough to work with. The situation still worked itself out, and it ended up not being such a big deal. But it does bring down the vibe, and vibe is a huge thing when you're recording, because I honestly feel like you capture it, and you can tell in the performance if it's there or not, And so you can tell if someone's not really getting along, with the producer, or the situation sucks, He's going to want to get out of there real quick, and his drum tracks are going to be, subpar.
Right.
So you got to try and make it the, best situation you can regardless.
Right. And in a similar fashion, how did you find adapting to playing with different members? So, once Jackson left, there was you had Greg and then a number of different guys, kind of later on Far From Nowhere. How does that as a drummer kind of affect your creativity, or just your ability to adapt to new players? Was that a challenge at all, or is it, you just kind of keep doing your thing and it works itself out?
Well, it is a little bit of a challenge, especially when you had a lineup you started with, and then, you have a couple new musicians come in. The dynamic changes for sure. I think I got away with it a little bit because I'd played in several bands before Slick Shoes, and even some of which were strangers, I did not know, and I had to try out for said band. So That was by far the weirdest situation I would have ever been in. So like anything was kind of cooler than that, you know. I'd never really had a problem adapting to, you know, any of the guys who ended up playing in Slick Shoes. They were all, you know, and still all are just monster players and great in their own respects. Just good people too, you know.
Yeah. Can you think of? Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, it wasn't too hard at all to adapt. Is what I was going to say.
Yeah, that's awesome. Can you think of a band that you guys toured with where, how do I word this? Like where you really loved the drummer or loved watching a drummer? Like I know maybe, you know, you always kind of like watching the drummer, but is there any kind of specific band that you got to watch their drummer every night play that you really enjoyed?
That's a good question.
You know, maybe on Warped Tour or something.
On Warped Tour,
you know,
I loved watching Chris from Poison the Well.
I
I definitely watched Poison the Well just about every day so that I could see him play. That was a big one for me, honestly.
What was it about his style that you liked so much, or what drew you to watching him?
He's a monster, for one. I love his double bass work. Like, I love his footwork. And I love his ability to just throw in like different things to that style of hardcore. Like he would bring in, I forget what the name of the song is, where he's just doing this tom and kick pattern with the ride, and he just like, you know, he hits that for the longest time, but he's just got like such a good style, you know. Like you can, some drummers just sound like they're really trying hard. And then some drummers just sound like they're so comfortable they could be at home reading the paper, and he's one of those guys, you know? Yeah, there is something so mesmerizing about watching somebody, you know, whether it's drumming or just kind of doing anything that would be normally difficult, and they just kind of make it look so effortless. It's almost frustrating. Yeah, for sure. Like, why aren't you breaking a sweat, man?
They just, you know, either it comes naturally or they just know the parts so well, or, you know, there's a number
Not
of
a
things
single
that go into
grimace the whole set.
Yeah. Any other
here I am looking like I'm in like pain the whole time.
Yeah. Any other drummers come to mind?
I like to watch Yuri. Yuri and I had an ongoing thing where I would just love to watch him every night to see if he messed up, and he just never did. So, you know, he's a powerhouse. Love watching him, dude, for sure. I never got to watch Bill Stevenson play every night, but the times I did get to see him, it was pretty life-changing. I love the way he looks when he's playing, how he plays, how hard he hits the drums, his theory behind it, everything. Like he's definitely one of my favorite drummers as well.
Yeah, you guys recorded an album there, right? Was that Wake Up Screaming you guys did there?
Yeah, we did that at the Blasting Room. That was another surreal experience, honestly.
Yeah, what was that like, you know, as a drummer, what was that like having a guy like him, you know, telling you to do it again or saying like, great take, that's the one?
Honestly, seeing him on the other side of the glass was super intimidating until maybe song 3. And we finally sat down, and him and I were just rapping about my foot technique and like and everything like that. And after that conversation, it seemed like everything went I was so much more comfortable, you know?
Yeah, that's a pretty cool experience, getting to have, you know, maybe one of your all-time favorite drummers kind of almost coach you in drumming, or be the one that's, you know, almost kind of dictating, you know, is that the part that makes the record, is it not? You know, do you do it again?
Talk about taking his advice. He couldn't have said anything I would have said no to.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, you can't argue with someone that has that kind of experience. So with the new album, what's the one thing you hope fans take away from this new album? I'm sure there's lots of takeaways, but if there was, you know, if I was to listen to the album from front to back, what would you hope I took away from that experience?
That we had you in mind. Like, we thought about everybody while we were writing this record. We thought about our fans. We thought about what the other records we've done, and we thought about like how we can try and take it to the next level so that the fans, so you guys, would love it. And so we tried as hard as we could to do that. So hopefully y'all receive it the way we like.
Do you find that daunting in the writing process? Because, I mean, there obviously has to be, some give and take in that. You want to write what you like as well. And, I mean, this is a kind of a whole argument with so many bands where they kind of, change styles and, kind of disregard their fans because it's like, well, we don't want to play that kind of music. We want to play music we like. But then the people you're making the music for, aren't happy with it. However, are you making it for the fans or for yourself? Did you find with this that there was, kind of back and forth in that, or is it, you kind of like the end result as much as you hope the fans do?
We agreed we were going to write songs we loved. And the thing is, when we sat down and started writing, everything happened so naturally and everything was just flowing, like the songs were just coming out, and just, in one day, we just, boom, a song's done, right?
Yeah.
The only thing I could say about that is it was so easy to write that, there were times where I was like, should we revisit this and make sure, like it's how we want it, or, is this... again, I'm coming back to how, like, we did have the fans in mind. That I guess you could say that was a little daunting, that after a song was done, are the fans going to like it,
Right.
There's always going to be people that don't. There's always going to be naysayers. So our thing is, like, we're just going to try as hard as we can to make something we like, something that we know the fans hopefully will like, and let the naysayers naysay.
Yeah. Well, and the challenge, I guess, with a band like you guys that have been away for so long is, it's not like you had an album come out 2 years ago and you can kind of go off, the response from that. It's like, your fans are, right, 15 years older than they were the last time you put an album out.
Yeah.
And so it's, kind of, I'm sure it was challenging on your part to even kind of like, how many of those people are still into punk music? How many have kind of moved on, or, is there a whole new generation of fans now? I mean, there's so many different things to consider with that.
Yeah, you're so right about that. You're so right about that. For when we first started this, I kept calling the fans the kids, right? We're going to do this for the kids. And it just really dawned on me, this is not the kids anymore, It's the fans, and they're as old as we are. So,
yeah.
And what happens with age too? You get more opinions, and you get you're seasoned as far as listening to music, and you get your own styles and everything. So, yeah, it was a little bit intimidating, thinking about whether or not the fans grew with us, even though we were on hiatus.
Right. I guess the nice comfort with it is when it comes down to it, it doesn't really matter. You're not, waiting on this to, to get tours or to make your living off of. So when it comes down to it, it's like, you did it for fun. You did it because you enjoyed it. Hopefully the fans enjoy it, but it's not like you're living or dying on this, which is probably also, takes some pressure off as well.
It does 110%. Honestly, it's a lot easier to do this when it is not your bread and butter. It is a little bit less pressure, but honestly, the fans liking what we do is a good amount of pressure in itself.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well,
because as much as I say, let the naysayers naysay, I wish they would have liked it.
Right. Well, and you're hearing, the feedback so much quicker this time, and so what's that? This will be the last question. But what's that been like? Releasing music now versus 15 years ago, right? You release a song at midnight, and instantly people can be telling you what they think of it instead of a new song on a compilation or hearing it live or. That just that's been one of my favorite parts about this process, and I'm not even in the band, but every time you guys have dropped a song, I'm always checking your stories and the comments just to see what people are saying, and it gets me excited about it.
Yeah, well, you know what? So do we. That's it. I barely sleep on those nights, to be honest, because I'm constantly checking social media. Yeah, and it's just something that, like, you've been working on this thing for so long, you hope it's well received, right? Yeah. So, yeah. And I don't know. Social media is so rad. Like I was talking about this yesterday, that when we were first starting, we were kind of fresh off of using pagers. There wasn't even really cell phones, you know? So
Yeah.
it's like we would put out a record and then we would read a review of it. Like we didn't really know what the fans thought.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Until we saw them face to face. And then obviously all of those kids are going to like it, right? Because they're there to see you.
Right.
Now and especially with keyboard commandos who don't, give a rip what they say, you get the good and the bad and you get it right away.
Yeah.
And I personally love it. I'm okay, like I said, with the naysayers, and I love to see the metrics too. See how many times it's been played. See how many times it's been downloaded or whatever. Like I'm a huge fan of that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's been so exciting just to see people's reaction and excitement for it, and I can't wait for this record. I've loved all 3 songs, and I'm just anticipating the rest of it. So, thanks so much for all the effort and time that went into this album, and I'm sure it will be a really exciting time for you guys. So, man, Joe, thanks so much for taking the time just to share those thoughts. It's been really fun to just talk about drums and Slick Shoes and kind of what life was like versus what it is, and lots of good stuff in there. So thanks so much for taking the time to hang out tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me, bud. Nothing funner than talking about drums.
What were you doing there?
Communicating. Keeping up foreign relations. Giving him the bird.
The finger.
Yes, I know the finger, Goose.